Hmm. Okay. Alrighty. So today I'm beveling some veg tan leather, and these are strips that taper over about 5 feet long. And I'm tapering the strips, beveling the edge on both sides. And you'll see me hit this up at the top, and this wheel opens up when I hit it about a 64th of an inch. And as I'm going one way on the strip, I have to move the wheel this way. So you can see how that has beveled at 30 degrees roughly. And then I have to knock the wheel the other direction to narrow this fence as I go the other direction. And right now I'm cutting a little too deep, but not by much. And as the taper decreases, I'll hit the wheel the other direction by a 64th. And the effect is it stair steps a taper every so many inches. And this is quite a bit slower than hand beveling freehand, but it allows you to be a little bit more precise with your strips. This tool is from a company called Y-Knot Lace, and they make this combination beveler. It's kind of a cool tool. And I'll tell people a lot of times now, the fence is I'm off the fence, and I'm going to watch this worm of cut material and play with the cant angle here. And I'm going to just cut an even strip freehand without the fence to the end. Mostly because it's faster than keep adjusting the fence. So you can see. So, and as you pull it, you see it get wider smoothly. All the way up to about ½ inch. There's lots of ways to use all the tools. You don't need fancy tools to do this. A credit card and a razor blade do pretty nicely with this. But I've been using this tool just to make it more consistent, to see if it's worth taking the time to be more consistent with the bevel. Like I said, this is veg tan cowhide. This is 3/4 ounce. It's like 3.8 or 4 ounce. So hi there. I'm taking veg tan leather and beveling the bottom side. This is the top side, or the grain side. This is the flesh side. And I'm using this tool to help me accurately do so. And then I'm moving this fence back and forth with this adjustment in the back that bumps it about a 64th every time I hit the wheel. 64th of an inch. It's like 1/3 of a millimeter, something like that. And whenever this trace gets a little bit narrow, I need to hit the button to keep it cutting consistently. And because the strip is tapered, I have to work at it, keeping it consistent as I go through. And this is slower than freehanding it. You can also freehand with this tool, not just using the fence as a guide for everything. I'm going to not use the fence for the last 18 inches or so and just work at the cant angle and try and make it consistent as I go through the rest of it. So you can see it get wider as I pull it, and it's nice smooth taper all the way up to half an inch wide. And it's easier to work when you're freehanding the beginning of it because it's hard to get the leather behind it. But you can freehand the whole strip, but the thicker or the wider the strip gets, the harder it is to consistently trim the corner. But the more consistent and smooth you can be with your tapered strands, the more uniform the end project ends up. The prettier the string, the prettier the project ends up. And now it's starting to squish against the fence. You see the difference here versus here. Means I need to bump the fence open a little bit more so that I'm not quite cutting all the way through. And you can see the bump in diameter where I went out with the strip a little bit. Oh, this fence was locked a little bit. So even though I hit the wheel, it didn't open. You can freehand this with a credit card and a razor blade. I have some videos on doing that before I got this tool. I'm just playing with it to be more consistent. And as the as I get down to the thin end, I'll just keep the trim and cant the leather this way so that I can peel off a consistent amount all the way down to zero, rather than try and keep adjusting the fence. You can see it's faster. And these are individual feathers that haven't been tied together yet. Once the fence engages, once it touches the fence, the friction on the string will change. So now it's engaging the fence. It's got two surfaces that are rubbing. And I have to start opening the fence to let it through. And this is more of an art than it is a science, but the more accurate you can make your tapers, the more even your plating will be after you get the strips cut. And I'm using veg tan cowhide just because it's available and the person that this whip is for is in a state that doesn't let you use or bring in kangaroo. And at the end of this whip, it will transition to Kevlar, which allows for the strength to be the Kevlar, not the veg tan cowhide, so it'll last longer. I'm just going to not adjust the fence and keep that 30-degree bevel running right on the edge of the leather as close as I can. It's kind of like sewing a seam in fabric. You're trying to keep everything lined up and smooth as it goes through the foot. And it's starting to chatter a little bit, so I'm going to lift the blade up a little bit. I lifted the blade up, and then when I screwed the screw down, the blade went back. Kind of annoying. So this black is Sharpie that I've added. And this is a single chisel shaped blade. It's a carpet blade that I use in my strand thinning tool. And that tool uses the center part of the blade. I'm trying to run this down until it engages the fence or the rail. Now it's rubbing the rail. I'm going to open the fence a little bit. Like I said, this isn't rocket science. It's just trying to be precise. Do some precision beveling on tapered strips. This is just one way to do it. I usually just freehand these, but I've been playing with using this particular tool. I'm going to make the fence smaller. And it's important that you're creating the same amount of friction and stretch in the leather as you run it through the tool. You're pulling it over a surface. It's getting a little narrow there. And that strip is looking a little bit better. Now I'm going to just freehand the other half of this strip by keeping the attack angle a little bit closer to me on the left hand. And you can see the result. We're starting to engage the fence, so I'm going to bump the fence back. And the taper changes every 6 inches roughly. Let's see, you can see how thin that got. I need to back it up and gauge the fence a little bit more. You can always cut off more, but it's hard to cut off less. It's kind of like the difference between carpentry and woodworking, you know. The more precise you can be, the better the string is, the more consistent the lay angle. And you're trying to match the taper of the shop bag that's bolstered, or the shop bag and the bolster, to the tapered strip width. Notice I'm not moving the fence, I'm just freehanding this. And yes, the reason I'm wearing a band-aid is I found the blade the hard way. But not beveling. I found the end of the scalpel because you take the ends of this and you cut about a 1/2 inch hole just down the middle, and then you marry the two halves together when you're done. And I'm just freehanding it until it engages the rail, which takes quite a bit of practice. But mostly you can watch the stiffness of the offcut, because it'll be a tattletale that you're cutting all the way through to the other side. I'm trying to stay just beyond where it's kind of limp, where I'm just almost getting, but not quite cutting through the top side. Because if you cut through the top side, you're rebeveling and you're changing the width of the cut strip. So you can watch the behavior of the offcut to tell you when you penetrate to the other side, it gets stiff. Also, as the blade gets dull, this offcut will dance up and down. See it bouncing up and down. Means the area I'm cutting on is not as sharp as it could be. And you can bump the blade up where the sharpies is, which should still be sharp. Sorry. Problem with my workspace is I'm constantly running into stuff if I'm trying to shoot a video. But I try and share what I'm doing, let people see. And at some level, it's probably easier for me to freehand this than it is for me to use the fence. But once you know what to look for, you can refine your abilities and skills. And you can see the beveled veg tan. It's 30-degree bevel. Yeah. It's interesting because the lights are at 60 hertz. It's hard to get rid of the flicker. The other thing that can make it dance is if you get a little piece of leather stuck in front of the blade. We'll also sometimes get it to dance. I haven't hit the fence yet, but I'm getting there. Right there, it's hitting the fence. So I'm going to adjust the fence out. And you're working with a natural material, it's going to do what it's going to do. And you try and get it to comply and get it to behave, and you're going to constantly be dancing with the material itself, or whether you can get it to do what you would like it to do today. And some days it'll like you more than others. Some days you should just probably go fly a kite instead of be beveling leather. We're going to be tightening the fence as we go the other way. See how I've got too thin? Means I'm not cutting deep enough. That strip goes from 3/32 of an inch up to half an inch pretty smoothly, and it's all nice and beveled. I'm going to freehand this until it engages the fence. Right about 1/4 of an inch, it's going to engage the fence right there. It's rubbing the fence. But again, what you're watching for is as you get close, you're watching for this to catch the backside of the leathers where you're resizing, and I don't want to resize these strips. I just want to bevel them. They're already about the right size. So the behavior of the offcut will tell you if you're getting through the top side, because it'll get stiff like in this area. And that means you're resizing the strip instead of, see, it goes soft again. And I don't want to resize the strip, I just want to bevel the backside. And it's a balancing act. This tool makes it easier. And this strip tapers, changes tapers a little bit every 6 inches or so. Kind of like a stepped pyramid. Then going the other way, I'm going to knock it back. I'm just going to freehand it from here. I got a little bit thin. Now I'm not using the fence, I'm just using the attack angle and watching the offcut. Trying to keep it super consistent. Goes from about 3/32 of an inch. You can see the bevel at 30 degrees on both sides. All the way up to about half an inch. I lost focus for a second because I'm freehanding. And I'm waiting for the fence to engage. And once the fence engages, then I'm going to bump the wheel open a little bit at a time. You see the width change. And it'll go back to being a bit more loose. This will let you bevel, I think, down to a 16th or maybe a 32nd of an inch. It goes down to about 0.5 millimeter if you wanted to make straight lace. But tapered tapered string. Tapered string is a bit trickier to make because you got to change the tape. You cut right on the edge of the taper, but you can do it. And as you get better and develop more skill with things, the tools don't matter so much, but the knowledge of watching how the offcut comes off. Seeing it in person is nice, but being able to pull up a YouTube video and watch how somebody else goes about doing something is also pretty nice. And don't be like me, don't stab your finger accidentally with a scalpel. At least I didn't cut myself with a big open exposed blade doing this. And this tool can also be used left-handed. It's an ambidextrous tool. Just, I have it set up because of the bench and where I'm at and how much space I've got. I run it this way. I'm making small adjustments that are fractions of a millimeter and changing the pressure as I go till the fence engages. Just watching the offcut. It's a little bit like sewing seams where you're trying to feed the foot of a sewing machine and adjusting it as best you can. I'm going to open the fence as I go. And you don't have to bevel your tapered strips if you don't want to. You just spend more time rolling it smooth afterwards. Thank you for joining me. I'm just beveling some tapered strips for a whip. Actually, I've got 16 strips for 218. Sorry, 16 strips for 2 8-plate 3-foot whips here that I'm working on the feathers for. I call them feathers because that's how I think of them. But they're tapered strips of veg tan. It's starting to get a little too narrow. When you see me push here, I'm tightening the fence towards the blade. And then when it gets down to about 1/4 of an inch, I'll just pull it along this radius here and use the attack angle and tension to freehand the rest of the strip, which is a whole lot faster. You just have to watch the offcut to see how much you're trimming off. See, there I didn't get to where it's enough, but part of that is my blade is getting dull. One of my favorite blades to use are these number 11 scalpel blades. And part of the reason why I like them is especially the tip is super thin. You want to clean out, see. You can see right where the blade is meeting the top surface. A lot easier than with the bigger, heavier blade. And you can watch the tension of the offcut. But even changing the blade changes kind of dynamically how that's working. Watch, see how the taper and the bevel, there's a 30-degree bevel on that whole strip. I'm going to move the fence down and just this tightens the fence. By changing the attack angle and the engagement with the fence when it starts engaging the fence. You'll get a little bit of change in friction. Right there, it's starting to rub the fence. Right there, there's a huge change in how this offcut is because it's cutting through the other side. So pull it this way and it opens up the fence. If you tighten this, then it kind of locks the fence down. And then when you loosen it, it doesn't actually change the fence much. Another clue, when you're hitting the top surface, the color will change on the strip you're cutting. Oh, that's barely. You can change your attack angle a little bit just to follow the skin side as smoothly as you can. You can play with the tension and the friction and the stretch of the leather as it cuts. There's so many things you can play with. The one thing you don't want to play with is pulling your thumb through the blade, which happens to everybody when they try and do this, including me. So try not to do that. And we're going to tighten the fence as we go. But again, the important thing to watch is this offcut, not the strip itself, because if it gets stiff, it means you're cutting too deep. And if it gets too thin, it means you have to adjust the fence if you're using the fence. See, it got too thin. So I got to adjust the fence. Once you get down to about 1/4 of an inch, you can freehand this. Or I like to freehand it by changing the attack angle and following the curvature. So that's less than 1/8 of an inch. You can see how the bevel is. So I'm raising this so I have a sharp surface cutting through the skin. I've got the flesh side up, and I'm going to freehand using the attack angle and the fence as a linear guide until I start to engage the fence. And be very, very careful not to get yourself, but also be careful to watch the offcut and the amount you're cutting off to keep it even and smooth as the taper goes up until it engages the fence. And now it's starting to get to where it's about to engage the fence at about 1/4 of an inch. This is just how I go about doing stuff. I'm not saying if this is the right way or the wrong way. You can see we're exposing the skin side, so I'm starting to re-taper, change the taper. I don't want that, so I'm going to open the fence. So I'm just trimming off the back side, but not changing the taper of the strip. Because I'm trying to work with, hundredths of an inch of accuracy if I can. Actually try for like 1/2 thou, but it's easier to do in metal or even wood than leather, because leather changes as you pull on it and tug it, and the grain changes and the directionality changes, and it will fight you. And then every 6 inches or so, you gotta bring the fence a little bit closer to keep the offcut the same. Or you can watch the offcut and it'll tell you. Like, you don't have to think about it. You do this a bunch. The thought process will just be inherent, but I want to encourage people to get out there and do complicated things. So my website, my YouTube is about encouraging other people to strive for the impossible and get close, which is where all art is. Because creating things that are hard to, striving for things that are hard are how you improve at stuff. Now I'm just going to freehand the last half of this. I'm going to use the back edge of this fence and vary the attack angle. As the strip gets smaller. There's no wrong way to do things. There's ways that work and ways that don't. And if you find a better way, make a video and send it to me. You can do this same kind of a thing with a 2x4 and stick a scalpel blade in it, or a number 11 blade. If you stick the blade in at 30 degrees, you don't need the fancy tool, but the fancy tool allows you to be more consistent. This beveler is not terribly expensive. They don't sponsor me. They don't send me money. This beveler is by a company called Why Not Lace, and they have a website. There's a screw back here, you loosen up the fence a touch. And this head comes off. And they make a straight cutting attachment for resizing. And they make a 45-degree bevel tool for rawhide and other things, and it does pretty good on light rawhide stuff. One of the nice parts is it's a very repeatable tool. You can unscrew it and screw the next piece on and change your beveling if you wish. I guess I have 17 strips because I cut a spare. So I got a couple more strips to go. This is using a number 11 scalpel. It's about a 5-cent blade, 4-cent blade. You can use schick blades in this. You can use carpet blades in this, but carpet blades are very dangerous. They hang out off the edge of the tool. It's not really designed for them. Scalpel blades work well. The thinner scalpel blades work well. The thicker ones are more of a problem. So I'm going to bring this until the fence engages. I'm freehanding it. Once it touches and starts creating more friction, now it's rubbing up against this fence. And I'm going to kick it wider. Each one of those kicks is about a 64th of an inch. It's almost nothing. But the goal here is to bevel it without resizing the width of the strip as best I can. See how stiff this is? It means I'm resizing. See it get limp? You really don't want to be changing your taper with your beveling pass if you can avoid it. See it gets stiff. And going the other way, you just push on the back of this and spin the wheel to bring it closer. Every 6 inches or so, the edge of the width of this was bumped down as I cut it out. I'm going to freehand the rest of this by adjusting the attack angle and rubbing it against the back edge of the fence. So you've got about 1/8 of an inch. You can see the bevel and how consistent the 30-degree bevel is. There's a place where I necked it down just a touch. So it's a good thing I made 17 of these, not 16. Because that one will go in the rebevel pile or scrap pile. Assuming that I make this last 16th one perfect, which is assuming a lot. Okay, I'm going to move the blade up. Get some fresh cutting surface. And the tension and the speed you're cutting at matter. You have to vary it, especially if you're doing this, because you can bevel chrome tan with this tool. Again, they're not a sponsor. They don't pay me anything. I bought this. Tighten it up. Hi. I see somebody said hi. So you'll see when I make videos, I tend to run for an hour to an hour and a half. And that's not exactly planned, but that's has a lot to do with my ability to stay focused on this, especially if I'm trying to talk about what I'm doing. And once you get tired, you spend an hour and a half doing something. Mind you, I've been doing the same exact thing for an hour and a half. I'm going to freehand the rest of this and see how that goes. So that's the 17th strip. And pretty good. Oh, you want to know what this is for? This is for, give me 1 second. Let me run in the other room. So, the person who asked what this is for, these strips will be plated over a core. I'm going to slide this out of the way. So one nice thing with this tool is it has a rail attachment, so you can slide it out of the way. So this is a shop bag that has a stitched bolster that tapers for a whip. And then when you take those strips and dye them and plate them, they will make a whip that tapers. And in this case, I swap way back here. The strength of this comes from the Kevlar, and the strands drop out. And then a big feather. But that's what these strips are for. They're for a signal style whip, like so. That's the core. That's the stitched core. So I have some other videos on, stitching a bolster to a shop bag. You don't have to stitch your bolsters. I just was playing with stitching it because it makes it easier than trying to wrestle the wrap and keep it consistent and keep it wrapping so there's not any gap. But there's lots of ways to do everything, and please explore and have fun. Like and subscribe, and check out my other videos, especially my live ones if you like this kind of a format. This is the Big Daddy version of the same thing for beveling. And it works better for rawhide and stuff than the small Y knot tool. The Y knot tool is the one I use for small stuff. And I braid a lot of different things. I happen to like making tapered whips, but it's good to see you. You can see you have a bunch of offcut that looks like a squirrel's nest. It's veg tan. Can be used for making pillows, stuffing, or stuff like that. This is Chuck with Pocket Snake signing off. Have a great day, guys.